through Yahweh's Spirit. And he becomes number 2 in Egypt. Let's go to Joshua. You have heard, remember Exodus 20:14, where we started tonight? You have heard that it was said by those in ancient times, you are not to commit adultery. But I say to you, what authority does he have? He's Yahweh in the flesh. Does he have good authority? He is the authority. He is the authority. You have heard that it was said by those in ancient times, you are not to commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks with lust at a woman has already committed adultery with her in his heart. People think that pornography is a victimless crime. Oh, really? Oh, really? Who do you think keeps these people in business? If people quit buying and signing on and renting and however it is you get a hold of it, you realize that they do it for the money. If they didn't have customers, business would fold, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Supply is dictated by demand, isn't it? How many families have been destroyed because there's constant adultery under the same roof of a man or a woman these days watching pornography? How many marriages have been destroyed? How many women have been made to feel like dirt? How many women have been made to feel inadequate, insufficient, not good enough in their own house with their own husband that they have a pact with, a covenant, a marriage? It's time for Christians, men and women, to get rid of pornography, to get rid of anything that goes in your eyes that is adulterous in your relationship. All of you know that no one who is sexually immoral, impure, or covetous, which is idolatry, has any inheritance in the kingdom of the Messiah and God. You want to lose every penny of your inheritance? That is if you're saved. If you're saved, do you want to lose every bit of your inheritance? To have none. Zero. None. Commit these things. You will have shame in heaven. There will be tears in heaven. And you'll serve as a bad example during the millennial reign of Christ. That word, sexually immoral, is that a familiar word? In the Greek, it's pornos. Isn't that something?
Wow.
Isn't that something? And it simply means any kind of sexual immorality. The Old King James a lot of times translates that word fornication, but that was 400 years ago, the best way of communicating that word. But the word is pornos, and it means sexual immorality. And it stands for every type. Fornication, which is having sex when you're not married. Adultery, which is having sex with someone who is not your spouse. Homosexuality, whenever you're having sex with someone who's of your same sex. A dude with a dude or a woman with a woman. Homosexual, that's an abomination. I don't care what they say today, it's an abomination. It goes against the very pattern that Yahweh created for this world. One man, one woman. One to represent Jesus Christ, one to represent the church. Whenever you take two men, it is an abomination. It's a perversion against Yahweh's plan. It's like having two Jesuses in the same relationship. You have two women, it's like having two churches together. It breaks the entire plan of Yahweh's purity and of the future marriage. It is an abomination. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Homosexuality has always been wrong. It will always be wrong. It is an abomination. It's not just a sin, it's an abomination. That means it's detestable. I don't mean to be graphic or rude, but just think about the physical act. I don't know if there's anything more disgusting rape. And I put these verses here so you can check it out if you'd like to. That little passage that I gave you, the Deuteronomy 22, 25 to 26, that shows us that rape in Yahweh's eyes is a capital crime. You think God doesn't love his ladies? Yahweh loves his ladies. You know what he says? You rape a woman, it is just like murder, and you will be put to death. That's what Yahweh says in these verses. You commit rape. You take someone's sexuality from them. You steal what is only for their husband. You steal their virginity. You steal their sexuality from them. You steal their sex from them. It is the same as murder, and the rapist is to be put to death. There it is. Yeah, Yahweh does not like rape. Horrendous. The scars, you don't need to raise your hands, but if anyone in here has ever experienced rape, you know it, I hope not. It leaves lasting scars. How many people have I counseled that have been victims of rape or molestation, which is rape, on children? It leaves lasting scars. It creates scars on someone's personality, on their identity. They look at themselves differently after something like this happens. It is a horrendous act, and Yahweh knows this. And Yahweh knows this. And because the Bible mentions it, and because it happens today, bestiality. Human beings having sex with animals. And you thought the homosexuality was disgusting. Men who have sex with animals, both are to be put to death. And a woman who offers herself to an animal, both are to be put to death. That's what the passage says. It is a perversion. It is detestable. It is an abomination. Proverbs 6. Do not lust in your heart for her beauty. He's talking to men about the whore. Do not lust in your heart for her beauty. But as we see the whole conversation progress, we're not just talking about a whore. We're talking about someone who's not your wife. If there's a woman who's not your wife, guess what? He's telling us, do not lust in your heart for her beauty. Do not allow her to seduce you with her eyelashes. Men are weak with that. Women have the power over sexuality. And they start batting the eyelashes. And us guys just don't know what to do. Right? Do not allow her to seduce you with her eyelashes. Yahweh understands human nature, and men are easily seduced. I love this. A man is reduced to a loaf of bread at the hands of a whorish woman. Wow. And the adulteress seeks his life. She wants everything from him. He'll be better off dead. I love that a man is reduced to a loaf of bread. Imagine this. A rich man. He worked hard. Built a business, has a great job, whatever he did. He has money, he has success, he has a wife, he has kids. Well, all of a sudden, this brutish man, this ignorant man, let's not be too kind, this foolish man, he's not ignorant, he knows exactly what he's doing. This foolish man decides, I'm going to go have sex with someone who's not my wife. This rich man who had his future secure, this rich man who had it made, this rich man who could have it whatever he wanted, chose to take the one thing that he shouldn't take, and guess what he's going to be reduced to? Now whenever he's divorced, he's going to pay alimony. Now whenever he has to pay child support for his kids. And now, if the whorish woman became pregnant, he's going to have to pay her money too. He was just reduced to a loaf of bread. He went from champagne wishes and caviar dreams. I'm showing my age. Robin Leach, right? He went from champagne wishes and caviar dreams to a loaf of bread because he had to have the adulteress. He had to have a moment of pleasure. And as soon as she's upset with him, it won't be pleasurable anymore. Because the mistress can be some kind of evil, can't she? By God's grace, I don't know by experience, and I never will, but I've seen too many cases. Woo, they're out for blood. The mistress is out for blood, you guys. But guess what? If men would be men, there wouldn't be any mistresses. Well, here we are, Proverbs chapter 5. My son, pay close attention to my wisdom and listen carefully to my understanding, so that you may appreciate discretion and so that your lips may harbor knowledge. Verse 3. The lips of a strange woman. Why strange? She's not your wife. That's why she's strange. She's not your wife. The lips of a strange woman ooze honey. To too many married men, oh, every word they say, every syllable that comes from their lips is sweet like honey. It's so tantalizing. It's so seductive. His wife could tell him the same things, and it would sound like vinegar to him because he's an adulterer, because he is a no good man. But when she says it, it's sweet like honey because he's a foolish man. The lips of a strange woman ooze honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. Man's way. We've been introduced to the danger. The danger is the strange woman. Guard yourself from the flattery that drips from the tongue of a strange woman, a woman who's not your wife. Do not lust in your heart for her beauty. Do not allow her to seduce you with her eyelashes. Once again, there it is. Her beautifully seductive speech causes him to yield. The flattery of her lips derails him. You see how the Bible knows our human nature better than we do? Yahweh has our number. Verse 4. But her consequences are as bitter as wormwood, as sharp as a double-edged sword. You're going to have a moment of pleasure, and you're going to be pierced through. Her feet lead to death. You want to follow her? She's going to take you straight to death. Every seductive step is toward hell. What, you think she's going to lead you to heaven? That's what she tells you. Let me take you to heaven. No, she's taking you to hell. Her methods of seduction are so adaptable that you will not see them coming until you are already entangled. Does this sound like real life? This sounds too much like real life. This is time after time after time. Her methods of seduction are so adaptable that you will not see them coming until you are already entangled, and she will cause you to lose sight of the path of life. Oh, how human beings are distracted away from the truth and from the right path to go down the path of adultery. What have we learned? The consequences. The consequences. He is like a bird that hurried to the snare. It's like the rat that runs fast to the mousetrap because he can't wait to get the cheese. He doesn't realize it's a trap for his life. He ran as fast as he could to that mousetrap because he saw the cheese. It's like a bird. The adulterer is like a bird that hurried to the snare, completely unaware that it was for his life until the arrow shot through his liver. That's an old Hebraic expression. In other words, he's done for. He's done for. Her house leads to death. It surely doesn't lead to life. And her paths to the dead, not to the living. So now we'll go to verses 7 through 11 for the good advice. Yahweh is going to give us some great advice. Therefore, listen to me, all you children, and do not stray from what I'm telling you. Stay far away from her. Best advice I've heard. Stay far away from her. Don't go near her. Don't talk to her. Don't associate with her. You want to preach the gospel to her? Make sure that's all you preach to her. Stay far away from her. Do not go anywhere near the door of her house, or you will lose your honor to others. You have a good reputation? Not anymore. Now you're the home wrecker. Your kids who loved you and adored you and wanted to be like you, now they hate you because you make mommy cry every day. People at work thought you were a good role model. Oh no, you're having to move out of the big suburb now because you destroyed your home life and now you have to go get yourself an apartment. Wow. You will lose your honor to others and years of your life to the compassionless. I don't have the money this month. Oh, you don't pay my child support, my alimony? I will go straight to the judge. You will be locked away in jail. You will hand your wealth over to strangers. Remember the loaf of bread? You'll be reduced to a loaf of bread. You want this kind of life? Commit adultery. You will hand your wealth over to strangers, and your labor will enrich the house of a stranger. She's now getting alimony, or she's now getting child support, and she has another live-in boyfriend because she's not with you anymore. She had her moment of pleasure with you. So now your alimony checks, they're having a great time. Yeah. Her and her new boyfriend, they're having a great time, and you're struggling to make ends meet whenever you had everything. In the end, when your flesh and your body are consumed, you will be the one who mourns. That's awesome. Terrifying, but awesome. Do not allow your heart to follow her ways, nor be led astray down her paths. She has left many wounded in her wake. Don't be one of them. Don't be one of them. Don't be just the next name on her list. Don't be one of them. Yes, many able men. It pains me, I don't even like to say it, how many people who you thought you could trust and count on lost everything because of this kind of stuff. Many able men have been slain by her. Her house is the highway to hell, leading down to the chambers of death. Where did you think they led? Can a man hold fire in his arms? Does anyone here want to try? I make a lot of fires. I love to cook on the grill. I love charcoal. I love wood. I love gas. I love propane. You name it. I love to cook on the grill. But I'll tell you what, I love using the chimney starters because it gets all the charcoal perfectly, uniformly burning. So once they're in the chimney, you pour them out onto your grill and there are no cold spots and hot spots. You have a perfectly uniform grill. Well, I look at that chimney starter whenever it's ready and everything is just red hot. And I can think to myself, I have to use the handle that's like way separated from the thing because you touch that cylinder, it won't be for long and you only do it once. Can a man hold fire in his arms without burning his clothes? Can someone stand on hot coals without burning his feet? The same goes for the man who has sex with another man's wife. Whoever touches her will not be declared innocent. The adulterer lacks understanding. He doesn't understand that he destroys his own soul. Is Yahweh against adultery? Is Yahweh against sexual immorality? Yes, because it's the carnal version. You want to look at naked women? You want to look at naked dudes? You don't realize you're committing adultery or fornication in your heart. You don't realize you're destroying your own soul. You don't realize you're throwing your inheritance out the window. But I've done good deeds. Yeah, and you're an adulterer. But I've done some good things. Yeah, and you're a fornicator. Can't you say no? Can't you say no? Now let's take a look at the regret. You will say, how I hated instruction. Whenever you're in the depths of despair because you made bad decisions, you will say, how I hated instruction. How my heart despised correction. They tried to tell me. I never listened to my mentors. I ignored those who advised me. Though I was brought up in the heart of the congregation and assembly. How many of these people start in church? Yeah. I was one step away from utter ruin. Luckily, this guy got away from it. Praise God for that. Most guys don't. Most guys don't get away. We're talking about the regret. People don't blame a man for stealing food when he's starving. Who here is going to reprimand a man for stealing some food whenever he's starving to death? Well, people don't blame a man for stealing food when he's starving. But if he's caught, he must pay back sevenfold. And he will end up paying with everything he owns. There are consequences. But the adulterer lacks understanding. He doesn't understand that he destroys his own soul. He will suffer a beating and dishonor. His disgrace will not be forgotten. Fun night, right? Now, finally, in our final moments, let's take a look at God's way. I think this will be a little easier to get through. Drink water. This number 15 is directed at correct spiritual worship and fidelity to God. Think of Jeremiah 17, which I just love. Jeremiah introduces us to so many. What is unique about the book of Jeremiah? One, is the second longest book of the Bible, only 50 words shorter than Psalms, believe it or not. A huge book. Even though it has less chapters than many, it's just that they have really long verses. He introduces us to circumcision of the heart. He introduces us to a new heart, a new spirit. He introduces us to the fountain of living waters. So whenever we read, drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own well, Yahweh calls himself that in Jeremiah. Whenever you go to broken cisterns that can't hold water, those are idols. But whenever you have a well of living water and a cistern that holds water, that's Yahweh. Drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own well. Don't commit spiritual adultery. Don't commit adultery. Idolatry. Be faithful to God. Now we'll take verses 16 through 18. We'll take that as being toward humans. Do not allow your fountains to be spread around. Your fountains are your sexuality. A man has a fountain, a woman has a fountain. Do not let your fountains be spread abroad. Do not spew streams of water in the streets. It's a very poetic way to say something vulgar. It's a very poetic way to say your sexuality is for your spouse and only for your spouse. Keep your fountains and streams sacred. Do not share them with strangers. Your sexuality is for your spouse, for no one else. Let your fountain be blessed. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. Therefore, verse 15, be faithful to God. 16 through 18, be faithful to your wife. Joyfully live your life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of your pointless life on earth. How do you like that? You must know we're in Ecclesiastes when you see that, pointless. Joyfully live your life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of your pointless life on earth, which God has given you. For that is your lot in life and in all the work you do under the sun. He's given you a wife or a husband. He's given you a spouse. Enjoy your spouse. He's given you that. Now, there are some really rotten spouses out there. I'm sorry. That happens. That happens. Here's the point, though. Don't be that rotten spouse. You might have, unfortunately, had a rotten spouse, but don't you be that rotten spouse. Like a loving deer or a pleasant doe, let your wife's breasts satisfy you at all times. Oh, getting a bit vulgar? I don't think so. I think this is so intimate. I think this is so beautiful. I think this is exactly what men need to hear. Like a loving deer or a pleasant doe. Remember, this is Middle Eastern poetry. So now we might say a cat or a minx. But over there, a deer and a doe. Let your wife's breasts satisfy you at all times. Does Yahweh want a wife's breasts to satisfy her husband?
Yes.
There it is. Yes. Is Yahweh afraid of sexuality, or is he who invented it? Who made the female form the most beautiful thing in the universe? Yahweh did. Yahweh did. Who made sex pleasureful? Yahweh did. You think we did that? How did we do that? We're not the creators. He made sex so wonderful, but it's for a man and a woman, and it's for a married man and a married woman. Let your wife's breasts, I think the emphasis here should be on wife's, your wife's. Let your wife's breasts satisfy you at all times. And I'm telling you the secret, guys, don't ever look at another woman, and you will forever desire your wife. Whenever you start looking at every woman out there, whenever you start watching porn, you have committed adultery and you have screwed yourself up. You are screwing yourself up. No other breasts should satisfy you. No other breasts should be in your mind while you're making love to your wife. You want me to be frank and clear? There you go. You just heard it. Be completely intoxicated by your wife's love always. Okay, women. Question for you. Which woman here would be very happy if her husband was only interested in your breasts? No other woman's breasts. He doesn't want to see anyone else. Which woman here would be happy about that? Yep. 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 Yeah. Women, wives, who here would be thankful to God and would feel like the queen of your house if your husband was only completely intoxicated by your love and never by anyone else's? Yes. 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 And then I love verse 20. My son, why would you ever, after everything we've learned here tonight, and knowing what marriage represents, my son, why would you ever be captivated by a woman who is not your wife? Can the woman say, Amen?
Amen.
Yes.
Why would your hands ever touch the breasts of another woman? Can I get another amen?
Amen. Yes.
Is it me teaching you this lesson, or is this what God's Word says? I'm sorry if this doesn't get preached in churches enough. I'm very sorry about that. How many women would have loved for their husband to know this before it was too late? Yeah, I know. And I'm very sorry. I'm so sorry. Just remember that Yahweh's way is always right. Yahweh's way is always right.
Amen.
So what have we learned by this little section? Be satisfied by your wife. Do you know how beautiful it is? Do you know how awesome it is to be satisfied by your wife? In the most beautiful book, which we'll be going through very soon, Song of Songs. Song of Solomon, some people call it. The book calls itself Song of Songs. He will lie between my breasts all night long. The beautiful marriage between the king who is Jewish and his Gentile bride. Sound familiar? Wait till we get to the Song of Songs. One of the most beautiful love letters you've ever read. We're going to go through it verse by verse. You think God is afraid of sex? You think that you're not allowed to have pleasurable sex when you're married? Are you kidding me? That's the most pleasurable sex. That's whenever you're supposed to have pleasurable sex. When you're married, God says, as long as you don't commit sodomy, enjoy your sexuality. I gave that to you. It represents the joy that you're going to have in heaven at the wedding of the Lamb. The Bible says, 1 Corinthians 7, husbands and wives, do not deprive one another sexually. Are you surprised the Bible says that? I'm not. Who do you think invented it? Who do you think told us to get married? Who do you think said the two will become one flesh? God. Husbands and wives, do not deprive one another sexually unless both of you consent. What's the primary word here? Consent. To abstain for a specified period. Must be a specified period. For what? During which both of you can dedicate yourselves to prayer and fasting. But afterward, you must come back together sexually so that Satan does not tempt you in your lack of self-control. Wow. That's a great chapter for men and women, for married husbands and wives. That is a great chapter, chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians. It teaches you to enjoy your sexuality in the confines of your marriage. I love Hebrews 13:4. Marriage is honorable in all, and the marriage bed remains undefiled. What does that mean? As long as you don't break Yahweh's rule of sodomy. If you don't know what that means, just look it up yourself. I'm not going to tell you. Marriage is honorable in all, and the marriage bed is undefiled. That could be translated, and the marriage bed remains undefiled. In other words, enjoy your marriage. However you want to express your sexuality between the two of you, if remember that key word, consenting, as long as both of you are consenting, enjoy your sexuality, enjoy your marriage. But, what's the biggest word in the Bible? But God will judge fornicators and adulterers. You're having sex outside of marriage, you are no longer undefiled. You are no longer honorable in all. You are going to be judged if you're a fornicator or an adulterer. Final verses. Yahweh sees everything you do. Yahweh knows your every move. The wicked are caught in their own iniquities and will be bound by the chains of their own sin. They will be led astray by their own gross foolishness and will die for lack of instruction. What have we learned here? Yahweh sees and Yahweh repays. Man's way, there's danger. There are consequences. He's given us good advice. He does not want us to have regret. God's way, be faithful to God first. Be faithful to your spouse. Be satisfied by your spouse. And remember, Yahweh sees and Yahweh repays. We made it. I chose a very special verse from Song of Songs as your memory work for this week. My beloved is mine, and I am his. That will have such a profound meaning when we get to that book. And I hope you can already kind of see it has a very profound meaning and a very intimate meaning to us already. My beloved is mine, and I am his. Song of Songs 2:16. You want to stay away from adultery, fornication, and all kinds of sexual immorality and all kinds of unnecessary sin. Concentrate on our culture in Christ. If you're concentrated on these 7 things every day of your life, guess what you're not going to be doing? You're not going to be committing fornication or adultery or sexual immorality or a host of other things. If you're committed and if you're concentrated on our culture in Christ, loving Yahweh above all things, loving your neighbor as yourself, loving and edifying the church as Christ loved and edified the church, keeping his word. To keep his word, you have to read his word. Evangelizing. If you truly take steps 1 through 4 seriously, guess what you will find yourself doing.